You said, sorry, you said you were an ex-Muslim, yes?
Yes.
What's your name, sorry?
Armin.
Armin, Abbas, yeah? Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Scripture. The difference is Muhammad, it wasn't because people didn't meet his Quranic challenge, because of course you can't replicate a book. You can't replicate any book. You go replicate Shakespeare. If it's exactly the same thing, then it's Shakespeare. If it's not, then I see.
We didn't say copy, did we? You've raised a lot of red herrings, quite frankly.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. So do you believe that therefore Muhammad was a liar and he deceived the people in believing that this is the Quran from God? I'll tell you what's very interesting.
Right.
The Quran actually talks about this concept of I don't know.
Which is a very honest position.
The Quran says that the disbelievers are uncertain and they hide behind their uncertainty.
They're not hiding, they're actually wearing it with pride.
Because they're wearing it with pride because it's a cop-out. And that there were thousands of messengers that were sent to every nation around the world with this same message.
Okay.
I would hold more validity to that claim than some historian who's telling me that, oh, I've proven that these are all stem from the same place, because that claim that you've just made,
right,
I can tell you is false.
Well, the thing, I never said, when it comes to history, nothing is 100% proven, right?
Right.
So I didn't use the word proven.
So who makes the claim?
Well, I mean, the many scholars.
Which scholar?
Well, I mean, I have to go, I don't memorize the name, I just read the work, but I'm not good with names, okay?
Yeah.
But I can look it up if you want.
Yeah.
But that's not the point. But how do you know, so you said you know that your source is at the Quran,
yes,
and you know that it's from God.
Yes.
How do you know that?
That's a very good question. So whenever you look at something, you have to look at what are the things that you would have to find for the original claim to be true. So for example, the Quran says, Allah says in the Quran, had this book come from anyone other than your Lord, you would have found many contradictions, many discrepancies in it.
Right.
So for example, if Allah claims about a prophecy, something to happen, and it doesn't happen, then you have a very strong argument that you've prophesied many things in here that happened many years later,
right,
but they didn't happen.
Right.
So you have a valid claim of being critical of that book, right? If now those claims come true, you have to argue that, well, either the person, the author of this book must have known,
right,
or he made a guess, and his guess was correct.
Right.
Now, the way that a rational person would assess whether it's a guess or whether it's something more significant is that on balance of probability, he would have to say, when this claim was made, on balance of probability, the person who made the claim at that time, what would he have been thinking in terms of what this outcome might be? So for example, I'll give you an example. Allah talks about the battle between the Romans and the Persians. And at one time, the Romans are completely defeated. And the prediction is made that within a certain set period of time, that in fact they will be reconquered.
Right.
And at that time, nobody accepted that as a reasonable claim.
Okay.
Because when you've been destroyed, there's no concept of you saying that just within a very short period, within 8 to 10 years, you will once again reconquer.
Did you say specifically 8 to 10 years?
That's the specified time.
Okay.
No, hold on a second.
Sure.
Now, if you have many claims made of that nature,
is that in the Quran?
Many claims. If you have many aspects which touch on let's say a nature, on things of nature,
right,
which were unknown at the time,
right,
if you come up with a scripture which openly challenges the reader,
okay,
that if you are truthful,
right,
come up with the Quran like this.
Can I?
Hold on a second.
Let me know when I.
Look, when you ask me,
okay, sorry,
what are the reasons?
Right.
If there are many reasons, I have to go through at least some of them.
Okay, but
if I go through one of them, two of them, it's to some extent irrelevant.
But then I will forget. I need to.
Well, then I can remind you.
Okay.
Okay.
So I wish I could take notes.
Then I can remind you.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you have a scripture which basically says, look, And you have to think about the psychology here.
Okay.
You have a man in a desert in the 7th century telling the Arabs of at the time of his people at that time, who were the most eloquent poets and authors and writers.
Right.
He himself is, as the Quran explains, ummi, unlettered.
Okay.
And then he challenges them, the Quran basically challenges them, if you are truthful, and I'm the liar basically, come up with a Quran like this.
Okay.
Then
I know
the challenge drops
Yes.
to but 10 chapters like it.
Okay.
Just 10 chapters.
Right.
Then it falls to 1 chapter. Come up to a chapter.
Again.
Now, there are 2 or 3 things here. Number 1, the challenge has not been met.
Right.
Number 2, you have to look at the psychology. Would a person who wants to lie and deceive people, would he make such a claim?
Is that a question? Can I answer?
No, I'm just saying, would he? And I think that
Yes.
the
yes.
honest answer is that if he has poets and authors and writers around him, knowing that they could easily defeat him on that subject, it would be futile and suicidal to make that claim.
No, it wouldn't.
Okay, why is that?
Because you could always claim that, no, it's because what's a good book and what's a good writing is a very subjective claim, right? So no matter what I write, I could claim like, look, my book is better than yours.
Yes.
And you could be like, no, it's not.
Yes.
My book is better than yours.
Yes.
And no matter what I write, you could always, at the end of the day, just say that, no, this is a greater book. My book is a greater book. So this is an impossible challenge to meet because I could write even a better book than yours, and you will just keep saying, no, my book is better. And you would just deny the fact that the book that I wrote is better.
I'll tell you why you're wrong. Okay. On an individual basis,
Right.
you're quite right that whose dog is this, by the way? on an individual basis, between 2 individuals, you might have a point. But the issue here is, he's telling the Arabs, turn away from your families, from your kin who are disbelievers, join Islam. So you're breaking your ties here with family.
Right.
And the Arabs were very, very, and they still are,
Right.
very tribal, right? And family to them and tribe to them is everything.
Right.
Okay, hold on a second. Not only that, but you know this alcohol that you love so much?
I don't.
Not you.
I'm an ex-Muslim.
Not you. I'm talking about the Arabs.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
This alcohol that you love so much, by the way, guys, no more alcohol. And you know you have to wake up now before sunrise and you have to pray. Okay? Before sunrise, you've got to get up now. You can't get drunk and wake up at midday. You've got to wake up at 5 in the morning and you have to pray every day.
Right.
And you can't drink.
Right.
And you can't fornicate. You like fornicating at the moment. You can't do that either.
Right.
Okay? And you have to fast in Ramadan. And you have to, by the way, defend yourselves, even if it means fighting your own families who wish to try to kill you. You have to defend yourself against them. Now, hold on a second. Now, to convince those people that this book cannot be replicated
Right.
is an impossible task.
Actually, it's not.
Okay, why is that?
So a different picture would be, let's say that I am poor, right? I'm an Arab living in that era. I don't have much support. I feel like I'm being oppressed. I think the more powerful tribes are mistreating the less powerful tribes. They have monopolized the trade. They're taking advantage of people without protection, and all of a sudden this guy is coming and saying, you're all equal, all these inequality doesn't matter, there's only one true God, and you say some beautiful poetry, and you're a leader that has a very convincing, charismatic. You fall in love with this leader. You create a cult of personality.
Yes.
I think that would be very appealing, right? If your life is not that good, this is a new opportunity.
You said you were an ex-Muslim, yes?
Yes.
What's your name, sorry?
Armin.
Armin, Abbas, yeah? Nice to meet you.
Yes.
Have you studied basic Islamic history?
Yes.
Did the Muslims become poorer And did their persecution and torture increase to extremes once they accepted Islam or not?
Yes, it did. For some of them.
For most of them?
Yes.
For most of them?
Yeah,
okay. In fact, they were killed,
yes,
tortured,
right,
raped, all sorts of things.
right.
Right?
Not all of them, but all.
Most of them.
Especially Bilal, for example.
Most of them. No, not just Bilal.
No, I just remember Bilal the most.
Yeah, well, there are, the first Shaheed was a woman.
Right.
And her husband.
Right.
And Ammar was a son, radiallahu anhu.
Yeah.
Ammar survived, but he was tortured greatly as well.
Right.
Okay?
And also, to contradict what I said,
Yes.
not everyone was poor.
No,
Osman was
that's
rich.
right.
He converted to
Right, there
Islam.
were many people, noble from high families,
Right.
who converted to Islam.
Yes, yes.
Look, brother, what I'm going to say to you is this,
Okay.
and it's not a slur on yourself, please, so don't take it personally.
I won't.
When I sometimes speak to ex-Muslims,
Okay.
many of the things that they actually say are very similar to those people that I speak to who have really very little knowledge about Islam. So they come up with a suggestion, but look, in practicality, in real terms, we have to be reasonable.
Okay. Have I not?
No, not you. I'm talking about as a topic, an assessment of a topic.
Okay.
If you or I were living in Arabia, in a good family, we're wearing the most expensive oud, we're dressing the richest clothes,
Right.
and the next day for accepting al-Islam, I'm wearing tatty, torn clothes,
Right.
and I've lost my father disowns me.
Right.
I have to do that for something that I truly believe in.
Right.
Okay? Truly, right? And the greater the detrimental effect to my life, the more convincing I need to be able to do whatever I'm convinced
So by
of.
that argument,
No, my point to you is this. Look,
let me know when I can.
the point is, when I said to you, you cannot imitate the Quran,
Right.
the Arabs at the time, the haters,
Right.
many of them tried. In fact, one of their most famous poets,
Right.
you might know the story,
Yes.
where the Quraysh say, go and find out where Muhammad is getting his words from.
Right.
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Okay.
So he goes and listens to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Right.
And when he returns, they look at him and they say, you know, the man that left us is not the same man that has returned.
But you were making a different point about
I'm telling you about, I'm just going back to the original point.
Okay.
And they asked him, where is he getting these words from? Where is this Quran coming from?
Right.
Okay? And he said, give me some time. I need to think about it.
Okay.
So he was pacing up and down in his house, thinking about, frowning, thinking about how he was going to answer this question. Not only did Allah reveal what he was doing in his Quran, in the Quran, the verses came down, that he's walking, he's pacing.
I read the
And he's
Quran,
thinking,
I don't remember that.
okay, I'll find it for you. He's pacing, but when he comes back, what does he say? Is he a madman? No, these are not the words of a madman. Is he a poet? He says, Wallah, I'm the best poet out of all of you. This is not poetry. Then they said to him, what is this? He said, the only thing that I can say is that this is magic.
Okay.
Without him acknowledging or understanding that he's already accepted a supernatural cause of the Quran. Because the Arabs, remember at the time, and this is a disbeliever.
They were very superstitious.
No, but
Arabs were very superstitious.
But he's a disbeliever.
Right, but
Now,
still superstitious.
so if I asked you the question,
Right.
where do you think the Quran came from?
Right.
You have to come up with an answer.
Well, I do have an answer, but I don't have to come up with an answer because there are it's appeal to ignorance. Just because you don't know the answer to something doesn't mean that the other person's answer is true. But I do have an answer.
No, that's not what. Look, the issue here is you're an
understand the appeal to ignorance?
I understand that, but you're an ex-Muslim, right?
Right.
So you've obviously looked into this.
Right. Yes.
You've studied it, right?
Yes.
So to reject something
you've managed to disprove it. No, that's not how disbelief works, right?
Okay.
For example, let me tell you, let's say like neither you and I know where the sun gets its energy.
Yes.
Okay? And if I tell you, come to you, I'm like, I know where the sun gets its energy. It has 1 trillion AA batteries inside the sun, and that's where it gets its energy,
yes.
right? And you think that makes no logical sense,
yes.
right?
Yes.
And you say that's not true.
Yes.
Okay? And I'm like, well, what is your answer? Let's say you don't know the answer, but you think my answer is illogical.
Yes.
You don't have to have an answer to know that what answer I'm giving you.
That analogy doesn't work here. I'll tell you why. Because you see, you're basing 1 trillion AA batteries based upon prior knowledge that can't happen.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing.
So my point to you is this. Look, you have prior knowledge of an impossibility, and then when somebody raises an impossibility to you, you reject it.
Right.
But this is not the example that I'm giving you. The example that I'm giving you is this.
Right.
That if I claim to you that the Quran is from Allah, and I give you reasons as to why I believe it's from Allah,
right.
it should not be an exercise of rationality which is subjective, but it should be a more academic exercise of analysis of the claims.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I said to you, the Quran cannot be imitated, cannot be replicated, right?
Right.
You can do now an assessment of that, a fairly critical assessment, and say, okay, all of these non-Muslim Arabs.
I don't get to talk much there.
I'll give you a chance.
Okay.
A lot of these non-Muslim Arabs, many of whom hate Islam,
right.
Surely they must have met the challenge.
They have.
Where?
Many people have.
Where? Show me.
Like a lot of people that I know that even today that are Arab poets have met the challenge. But
which ones?
But I could show you the people.
Brother, I've studied this. I've studied
well,
this.
Let me talk.
Okay, but if you say to me,
right.
A lot of Arab poets have met the challenge,
right? And
I say which ones?
Well,
and then you say,
well, I have to get out my phone.
Well, you have to give me, of course.
Yeah,
we have to analyze that, don't we?
Yeah, no, the thing is that when I show you better, like, okay, so meeting the challenge, does it have to be exactly the same, or just a beautiful poetry?
No. The Quran has a certain,
I've read the challenge.
Yes.
It just says a book like it. Quran is not very well written, in my opinion, okay? It actually doesn't make it very clear what the criteria for this challenge is.
Are you familiar with classical Arabic?
Can I say something?
No, but are you familiar with classical Arabic?
Well, we studied it for 6 years, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah, but are you familiar with classical Arabic of the Quran?
Well, depend familiar, because I aced all my Arabic exams,
right?
But that was in high school.
Yeah, but was that classical Arabic?
Yeah,
the Quranic Arabic?
Yeah, well, because I was raised in an Islamic country.
Yeah, but that's not classical Arabic, though, is it? There's a difference.
It has to be based on, like, we have a Quranic studies and Islamic studies and Arabic studies.
Yes.
And the whole point of Arabic studies is to understand the Quran.
Yes.
So we analyze the Quranic verses in Arabic.
Yes.
But that was a long time ago. I was in high school.
Right.
I'm 36 years.
Right.
So I was familiar with it, but maybe I'm a little bit familiar with it right now. Okay. The point is that when you say like it, if it's an exact copy, well, I'm just copying the Quran.
That's right.
Right? So by like it, do they mean like it's just beautiful poetry? Because there are so much beautiful Arabic poetry out there that when I read, it's actually way more beautiful than the Quran. Much better than the Quran. There are so many, in history, there's so many Arab poets that have done a fantastic job. In fact, the Quran, I only like 2 surahs in the Quran are kind of like beautiful poetically, you know. The rest of it, it doesn't really, it's not very interesting, it's not very beautiful. I don't really understand why people, like, the problem with this challenge is, if I say this poetry is more beautiful, you could just say it's not.
But that's why I said to you,
right.
Have you studied the grammatical miracles of the Quran, the way the structure is constructed?
Right.
Have you studied that?
Like, are you talking about the mathematical proofs?
No. Look, this is my point.
Okay.
This is my point to you.
No, I know.
You're going purely on aesthetics of what you feel subjectively to yourself. My point to you was a more academic one.
So that's very interesting, because the Quran doesn't really specify what does it mean by this meeting the challenge. Your definition.
What was my point to you?
Right.
My point to you was, here comes a Quran down.
Right.
Okay. I'm your neighbor. I'm your neighbor.
Right.
I say, okay, I'm a prophet. This book is from God.
Right.
From tomorrow, you got to believe I'm your prophet. Do everything I say, and you've got to change your life in all of these things. And by the way, this Quran is a miracle, and you can't duplicate this Quran. What would you say to me if I said that to you? You'd say I was crazy, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be impolite, but yeah.
You'd say this man's crazy, right?
Yes.
Right?
Well, I mean,
No, you would.
I would say it in a less harsh way than crazy.
Let's be blunt.
Okay.
You'd say this man is crazy.
Illogical.
You'd say this man is gone mad. He needs a mental, he needs to go and get he needs a psychological analysis done, right? But we're saying now that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gets wahi. Hold on.
Okay.
He gets wahi.
The ratio of me talking, you talking is very skewed here. Okay.
Well,
but go on.
he gets wahi. He goes to his people. He says, this Quran is from Allah, and you can't duplicate this Quran. This Quran is unique. Okay? And I'm the Prophet of Allah.
Well, you can't duplicate anything.
And everything, hold on a second, and everything I say from now goes. You've got to completely transform your lives. There has to be something other than just a nice man telling you to convince you of something so enormous. Now the question.
A lot of people have.
The question here is this.
That, yeah.
The question here is this. The question here is that the challenge is there,
Right.
and if they had met the challenge, that would have been the end of Islam and the end of the Quran. But the reality was that they didn't. And even the haters.
No, not really.
Even the haters.
There's so many. Okay,
even the haters at that time. Even the haters at that time.
So,
acknowledge that these were not the words of Muhammad.
So here's the problem with this conversation. You have made 6 or 7 claims, and I have a response to all of them, but I've only get to respond to like 1 or 2 of them because you don't let me right.
Okay.
Actually, eventually Muhammad, when he came up with the Quran, people ridiculed him all the time. You know that.
About what?
About the Quran. About it. Yes, there were poets.
No.
Yes, there were.
No, they were
poetry about it.
No,
yeah.
sorry, who?
There were poets. Okay, actually, there were even poets.
Who ridiculed him about the Quran? Just give me one name.
There was one guy that even mentioned that one of the people that I forgot his name, but you know the story probably. There was this is just one example. There was one guy that when he was writing the Quran for Muhammad, when he was reciting it because Muhammad couldn't write, he actually left Islam and he went back to Mecca and he told people because I suggested to Muhammad to write something in a different way and Muhammad agreed and he changed the text. And when Muhammad agreed, he realized that this is all nonsense. That Muhammad is just making it up as it goes and the source is not God. There are a lot of influences. In fact, you can see the influence of Christian philosophy, the source of Plato, Jewish mythology.
These were monotheistic religions, bro.
What?
They're all monotheistic religions.
Yeah. So he was,
not a surprise.
and Muhammad was like traveling, doing trade and everything. So he was basically getting ideas from all these other people around. You know, and what he did was not very unique. There were a lot of people in that time, both in Arabia and Iran, but mostly...
You've hit the nail on the head.
Right.
You've hit the nail on the head. It wasn't unique.
No, it wasn't unique.
Because we've had prophets before.
Right.
And this was a completion.
Right. Many people...
Okay,
so you're right. No,
let him finish. Let him finish. Let him finish.
There are many...
You've hit the nail on the head.
There are many...
So what...
Brother, let him finish. But let him finish his point first.
So what someone said in Jahiliyyah time was, this is nothing new for us. We've had prophets before.
Right.
He says, so you're right. There's nothing new.
Let him finish.
He came to complete... Sorry.
Let him finish. Go on.
I mean, even there, like in like Jerusalem or in there are people going around all the time saying that they're son of God, they're sent by God, and they had proofs, they had poetry, they had scripture. The difference is Muhammad. It wasn't because people didn't meet his Quranic challenge. Because of course you can't replicate a book. You can't replicate any book. You go replicate Shakespeare. If it's exactly the same thing, then it's Shakespeare. If it's not, then I say
we didn't say copy, did we?
Well, okay, replicate.
Not replicate.
Okay,
let me say replicate.
Let me
bring something.
You didn't. Let me finish my.
But if you say something incorrect, I have to correct you.
You said many things incorrect.
Well, then you have to correct me while I say them.
So no, you didn't. I wanted to interrupt you.
Hold on a second.
No. You said many things that I thought it was incorrect, and I wanted to interrupt you, and you didn't let me.
You finish your point, and I'll come in.
Muhammad won militarily. he won by force, and he managed to capture Kaaba. If so many people had joined him, and if he didn't have such a powerful army behind him, people wouldn't be like, okay, fine, we're giving to you because your Quran is so great. We just have to give up.
How many months did he fight?
Hold on a second.
Right.
Let him finish his point.
3 months.
So
let him finish his point.
He won a military battle, and he won. Many other prophets around him weren't as successful. It could be for many reasons. Maybe he was okay. If that's proof that he was right, then Hitler is right by that. So many people, when Hitler came, he was charismatic. He gave some passionate speeches. People believed in him. People followed him. He became very powerful, and he took over Germany, and Hitler took over Hitler took over Europe, right? And by that standard of people agreeing with Hitler and following his cult of personality, we don't say Hitler was right because of his success rate, because of how many people believed in Mein Kampf, right? That doesn't prove that Hitler was right. So it doesn't prove Muhammad was right. The number of people.
But you made so many different points here. You realize that?
Stick to one point, brother.
No, my point specifically was.
Right.
My point specifically was that the Quran was from God, and I believe that it's objectively provable that you can prove that it is from God.
Yeah, but
that was my claim. Hold on a second. Now you've gone into Hitler, Mein Kampf, and you've raised a lot of red herrings, quite frankly.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. So do you believe that therefore Muhammad was a liar and he deceived the people in believing that this is the Quran from God?
Well, I don't make claims about things that I cannot.
But you just said that the man said that I told Muhammad to include something in the Quran.
Okay.
And then he did or he didn't or whatever.
Right.
And Muhammad agreed that this was all false. So I'm asking.
This man's name is Abdullah bin Abi.
Yeah, exactly.
He became Muslim.
That's right.
1 year and 8 months before he was died.
That's right.
Okay.
And he lived in Mecca, not in Medina.
Yes.
Okay.
How he become writer of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and a lot of Sahaba, he become Muslim 20 years before Abdullah bin Abi.
No. But my point to you.
How we trust the speak of non-believer people?
Right.
How?
So
He's no writer.
My point is that there are many different. I'm not saying this is true or that is true, okay? Because what I'm saying is that there are many different. Because I wasn't there, right? And the sources that you're using are not reliable sources. These are sources that Muslims are giving about Islam, right? It's biased sources. The point is that you could come up with many different explanations for why something is true. I'm not saying which one is true. I'm just saying you have picked one of these explanations, and you're saying this is the only explanation. When I give you other explanations, it's not to say that this is the right explanation. I'm just saying I'm showing that you haven't. I'm just making the point that you haven't. Let me finish this one sentence.
Yeah.
I'm just making the point that you haven't exhausted all other possibilities.
That's an absurd argument.
Okay.
You know why it's an absurd argument?
Go on.
Because in life, you yourself don't operate like that. Mm-hmm. It's only when it comes to analyzing religion or God that I've seen people who disbelieve start jumping. Before that, they don't jump. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. First of all, you made an assertion. That a man wrote down the Quran with Muhammad, suggested things, hold on a second, went back and told the people that this is nonsense and it's not from God, right?
Right.
So I asked you specifically, then what do you believe? Okay. Now, what you're saying is what most atheists say. Mm-hmm. They hide behind these words, I don't know. And they just hide behind the I don't knows.
That's not hiding. That's very
I tell you what's very interesting.
Right.
The Quran actually talks about this concept of I don't know.
Which is a very honest position.
The Quran says that the disbelievers are uncertain and they hide behind their uncertainty.
They're not hiding, they're actually wearing it with pride.
Because they're wearing it with pride because it's a cop-out.
It's an honest answer.
No, it's a cop-out. I'll tell you why it's a cop-out.
Right.
Because if a person is honest,
right,
and I say to you, look, if you say there are only a number of logical variables as to where the Quran could have originated from, would you accept that?
There's no, actually, I don't know if you could exhaust the possibilities. Maybe, yeah.
Well, you can't exhaust the possibilities if you're not going to stay within the realms of being reasonable.
Okay,
but if you're going to stay within the realms of being reasonable, there are only a few rational possibilities as to where the Quran could have come from. Number one, Muhammad was a liar and he lied to the people and he made up the Quran to convince them.
Okay,
Number one. Number two, he was delusional. So actually he was mad, na'uzubillah. And as a consequence, he just made stuff up. And therefore, he came up with this Quran through deception and through insanity. Or number three, I would argue that he was sincere.
And he was a prophet of God.
He was sincere. He believed that.
I have more.
Okay, he was sincere. Okay, what's the other variables?
There's another one that he was a good man, but I'm not saying this is true. I'm just saying these are other possibilities. That he thought that telling people these things will help the society.
So he lied, basically.
Well, maybe he was being metaphorical.
No, he lied. That's a lie.
Okay, fine.
If I'm not a prophet of God, and this book is not, and this book is not from God, and I tell the people for whatever reason it's a lie.
Put it under the category.
So it still comes under that category.
Okay,
Go on.
Another fourth one is that the stories are just made up.
Yes.
Like these, especially because most of the hadith.
Forget the hadith. Talk about the Quran.
Okay, so well, in the Quran.
What are the other variables? Let's stick to point now.
Okay. Most of the stories about Muhammad are made up.
Stick to the point. How did the Quran came? Lie, insanity, or it was from God? I want you to give me another variable.
Honest mistakes.
An honest mistake. So he's delusional.
No, not by Muhammad, by other scribes that maybe associated words that were circulating to Muhammad.
So it was made up later then?
Made up later, yeah.
So again, deception and lies.
Fourth option.
Okay.
No, that's not a lie, because the intention was not to lie to people. Like misattribution, honest misattribution.
But
You know what Muhammad
no, let's.
I know.
He knows that. He's an ex-Muslim. He knows that.
I know that.
Okay. Hold on a second.
I'm not saying that it's a fourth one. I'm just saying that that's what.
Okay.
I saw your video.
So let's analyze those issues.
Right. Okay.
Okay. If I'm a liar and I lie about things,
Right.
what happens? What must you logically? Now I'm talking about logically, rationally.
Right.
What would be the effect of a person who is a multiple, pathological liar? What would be the effect of that?
Do you know? Can I say something about?
No. Answer the question. Stick to point.
Okay.
No, stick to the point. What would be the effect of that scripture?
What would be the effect of the scripture if somebody's actually
a
lying?
pathological liar.
Well, it depends. That's my answer.
What does it depend on?
How good of a liar are you?
Okay.
How much you can make people believe in you?
Yes.
How charismatic you are? How good of a leader you are? How passionately you speak about your
How
lives?
much you can see in the future?
No, I don't. This is another claim that you didn't let me respond to. There's nothing in the Quran that predicts the future, but that's a different argument. Because
So the issue of Rome versus Persia,
right.
you're saying that's not a
that's
prophecy.
no. The thing is that I've seen this claim made about the Bible, about the Torah.
No. Forget the Torah. Forget the Bible. I'm asking you specific. Let's stick to point.
No, I'm making a point.
He's saying what if he...
I want to stick to the point. The Quran predicts that the Romans would once again conquer the Persians.
The Quran says many. Okay, well,
Forget many things. I'm talking about that one specific thing.
Well, if you let me finish this, you will see how it's relevant to that.
Right.
If I write a book that makes a lot of claims,
Right.
it would be very unlikely that one of them doesn't end up being true.
Right.
It's like you just randomly say, if I just randomly say like this is going to happen, that's going to happen, this is where the sun goes down, this is how the world is going. Like you have a book of nonsense saying many things about many different things. Of course, something is going to happen at some point that loosely could tie into something.
You just made my argument. Thank you very much.
Okay.
You know why?
Okay.
Because you see what you've just done there.
Am I being rude in a way?
No.
Okay.
But you see what you've just done there. If you speak a lot of nonsense.
Oh, was that rude?
No, I didn't say you were rude.
Okay.
You think I said you were rude?
No, I just want to make sure.
No, I just said
very polite.
I just said that you made my argument for me.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay.
If I make lots of claims, I make lots of prophecies.
Right.
Every cause has an effect.
Okay.
That particular cause will have a very, very damning effect on that scripture. You know what it will be?
What?
Many errors will be uncovered in the future.
Which they have in the Quran.
Many prophecies will not come true.
Which they haven't.
Like which prophecy?
Not just prophecies.
Which
also
prophet?
There's so okay.
You said they haven't.
Yes.
Which prophecy did not come true? I pull out the Quran. You give me the quote.
Okay, so for example, well, not just the Quran, but Quran and the Hadith.
No,
right?
no. Don't, let's not jump around.
Okay.
You said the Quran made a prophecy which did not come true.
Right.
Give me the prophecy. I'll open the Quran here.
Okay, well, give me. Well, I know. I mean, I don't memorize the Quran like you have, but each one bring up the prophecy.
Be honest. You don't know, do you?
Well, I have seen a prophecy.
Let's be honest.
No.
Let's be frank.
No, I'm frank. I'm frank.
You don't know, do you?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Can you give me the prophecy?
No,
then?
because I haven't memorized.
Can you tell me the nature of the prophecy? What was it talking about?
Well, it was talking about in the Jews, right? For example, right? It was talking about the Zulqarnain, right?
That's not a prophecy, is it?
Right. Okay, maybe
that's history.
Okay. So
I want to know. Okay. You said, look, brother, if we're going to be honest, I'm not trying to corner you here.
Okay, no.
I'm not trying to win an argument.
Yeah.
But if we're going to have an honest argument, if we're going to have an honist discussion, you've got to be honest.
Can I be honest? Okay. Just a slight correction. Neither. It's the correction is like maybe not prophecy, but things that were supposed to happen in the past didn't happen in the past.
How can you?
Or like
brother,
things
if I said to you something happened in the past,
right?
Okay.
That's even worse.
Hold on a second. If I said to you something happened in the past,
no, you're right.
Hold on a second.
I'm admitting something. I'm admitting something that you're right.
Right.
I'm admitting something you're right, that you said that I was wrong,
right,
and you were right.
Okay, fine.
And the thing that you said that I was wrong was that the things that I was thinking about that is wrong. The nature of them are scientific and things about the past that never happened.
Yes.
Those are the nature of the things that I know in the Quran that are wrong.
Let's deal
and
with
you're
those.
Right. And you're right that when you said they're not prophecy.
Okay, fine.
You're correct.
Let's deal with the two that you just mentioned.
Okay. Which one?
If I mentioned something in the past
and it never happened.
Hold on a second. If I mentioned something in the past,
right,
the correctness of that statement referring to something in the past is dependent upon historians
and scientists.
No,
I'm talking about science as
it's not scientists. I'm talking about history here.
I'm talking about history and science.
They're two subjects, history and science. We can't talk about both together.
Okay, fine.
There are rational possibilities of whether something happened or did not happen.
Right.
But you can't be conclusive about something that might or might not have happened thousands of years ago, can you?
Well, you can.
Unless it's specifically of a scientific nature, whereby if I said to you, the sun did not exist 5,000 years ago,
right,
you could then scientifically say that statement is incorrect. But if I said to you an event occurred 5,000 or 10,000 years ago,
can I just
let me just finish my point. You can't say as an absolute whether it did or did not happen. You have to bow to the academia surrounding the subject, right?
I agree.
Right. But that academia is not an absolute in itself.
Can I make my examples?
Please.
Three.
Right.
The prophecies that I think that are wrong are mostly based in the Hadith, and you want to focus on the Quran.
Well, because that's what I believe came from Allah.
Okay.
No Muslim believes that the Hadith are verbatim from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they believe the Quran is the literal word of God.
I know.
So let's deal with that.
I'm just clarifying, because I'm admitting that something I said was wrong, right?
Okay, fine.
So the prophecies that but we want to focus on the Quran. The Quran, let's focus on one scientific, one history.
Let's go to history first, and we can look at the scientific.
All right. So the problem with the Zulqarnain thing is that it's such a big event in the Quran that it should be easy for historians. So this is, by the way, not deductive reasoning. This is inductive reasoning, right? So this is make something very extremely unlikely to be true, given that the claims that the Quran makes about Zulqarnain and the invasions that he have made and the people that he have met, and the numbers of the people and the wall that he was supposed to build. That is such a major event in history that if it had happened, we would have known about it.
Why do you say that?
Because we have evidence for much smaller events in history that have happened way before an army that big, or we have evidence for things that have happened for cavemen or for small villages, small things.
Have we lost a lot of history throughout history?
Yeah, but nothing that big
How would you know? How would you know? How would you know if something has been lost?
Right. So
No. Listen. Look at the logic. No, look at the logic here.
That's why I said it's inductive, not deductive
something
reasoning.
could be greater than the Zulkarnain incident,
Right.
like the very creation of this universe,
Right.
right?
Okay.
Or the very creation of Earth,
Right.
which you and I did not witness.
So that's my point. My point was. See,
But you can't treat that as an absolute to deny something, then, can you?
That's why I said it's not inductive
So
reasoning. It's deductive.
So how can you say it's wrong?
Because with history, you can never use deductive. You can never be like, this is absolutely
Right,
the
of course,
answer, right?
of course.
You can be like, seems like extreme, like close to impossible.
Why?
But you can never say this is absolutely. You said absolutely.
No, but when you say close to impossible,
Right.
I want to see your
So you're
rationale.
talking about Gog and Magog.
Your rationale.
The people that they're so large in number.
Yes.
That the number of them is higher than the people that already exist in the world, right? And that group of people have been completely missed by historians.
Well,
and you think that's possible?
Because you're using the wrong spectacles to analyze the issue.
Okay, but
Your spectacles are from an observational analysis of events. Hold on a second.
okay,
But we know
Right.
that A, there are many things that are not observational, are not in our observation.
right,
And two, there are things, of course, for religious people that are supernatural,
right,
which are also hidden. So, for example,
right.
Allah says that there aren't, I think, is it 2 fingers or 4 fingers between space from here to the heavens, where there is an angel that is prostrating to Allah. Okay?
Yeah.
Can you see the angels?
No.
Can I see the angels?
No.
But now the thing is, if you're going to look at it from a purely objective rationale,
Right.
based upon observation, that statement will be absurd.
Yes, it is.
Of course, but we're not saying that you should be looking at it through
So you see
the spectacles
you see the
of
double standard. Here.
No, there's no double standard.
Man, what are you saying? You don't understand.
Yeah, but
I don't think you do, man.
that's a very
Anyway,
that's not a good response.
What-
Can you agree
what-
with that? He's having a logical conversation with me, and you're not. Just saying to
Anyway,
somebody.
don't get upset. Go on. Say what it is
This
you
is
want to
the
say.
proper. But even though, by the way, I just want to thank you because even though I disagree with you, it's very rare to find somebody to have a good, friendly, proper discussion with.
May Allah make me that way.
Yeah.
Really? Is it rare?
Yeah.
Anyway, let him finish. Let's not
No,
all
I'm
jump.
just curious.
But I think you're very friendly and very.
Okay.
I appreciate the very friendly discussion that you're having with me. So thank you for
I
that.
think it's mutual. Thank you as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're
No,
right.
go ahead. Of course.
So I think there's a double standard happening here because when it comes to making claims about like the life of Muhammad, right? We're basing it like we're doing a psychological analysis of somebody that was living 1400 years ago, and we're using we're just making very hard claims, like sure claims, like this is the only explanation. This is like the people. How could somebody be wealthy and leave their religion if this wasn't true? And it seems like professional psychologists today don't make claims like this about people that they're meeting in their real life.
I'm a
today.
psychiatrist. Psychiatrist.
Right. And like if I say like, oh, that man is insane or that man is like a psychopath, a professional would be like, you can't just say that by looking at somebody and listening to. They're like, you need to really study the guy in person. But the interesting thing is the loose standard is like Muslims are making. Oh, this person.
Let's okay. No, but let's stick to our point. Let's stick to our point.
Yeah,
which
no,
was
my point
Gog and Magog.
My point is that
Let's stick to that.
My point is that there's a double standard, right?
So he's been scrutinized.
Yeah.
And he stood the time.
But you cannot study somebody from this by hearsay and secondary sources.
No, you're being.
cannot.
Look, it's a straw man. I'll tell you why that's a straw.
No, but let me tell you. Bring it back to Gog and Magog.
When you say when you talk about
Magog.
psychologists,
Right.
When you talk about psychologists, there is a book written about the life of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, by Leslie Hazelton.
Okay.
She's an agnostic Jew.
Yeah, but I wasn't making a point.
You just did though. That's the problem.
No, it wasn't finished.
Okay.
I was trying to bring it to Gog and
No, but the
Magog.
problem is, if you make so many points, now you're talking about psychology, you're talking about psychological
So my
analysis.
point is that.
But then, if you look,
Okay, I will make one.
please, let's stick to Gog and Magog.
Right. My point is that when it comes to me saying that why this doesn't match academic and scientific evidence, you're like, well, it could be supernatural, it could be this.
No, you're talking about history here.
The history, but when it comes to
History is not
Muhammad,
science.
you stick by scientific.
No.
But you're conflating two issues here. Look, science and history are separate things, aren't they?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about using empirical evidence.
I'm talking about there is no empirical evidence with history. I said that to you from the beginning.
No, people go archaeological evidence.
That's not empiricism, is it?
Well, I mean, it's based on observation.
Right,
based on observation.
It's based on observation, and
Right.
from the observation,
Right.
what do? You derive a conclusion or a theory. Hold on, a theory. So, for example, I'll give you an example.
No. My point is that when observation doesn't match the conclusions that Muslims want, they appeal to
That's not
supernatural.
true. That's not
but
true.
when it does,
No, that's not true. That's not true. Look, let me please explain the Gog and Magog
pointing
thing
a
to you.
double standard.
No. You're conflating several arguments.
Sorry,
You're conflating several arguments.
right?
To justify your stance,
Okay.
when in reality, science and history has nothing to do with each other.
I mean, based on how you define science,
Unless
some people call it social sciences.
unless I make a scientific claim in history, which you can then analyze in the modern times as to the validity of that scientific claim.
Okay, basically,
But if I'm saying a historical event occurred, let me give you an example.
history is part of social, humanity. It's part of science.
But it's not an analytical or empirical
Okay.
study of past events.
right.
Okay?
Well, it is.
Depending upon the evidence that you find,
Right.
the strength of your conclusion is linked to that.
Right. That's
Now,
science.
if there are some past events,
Right.
that we've lost,
Right.
can you apply scientific method to that?
Yes. So
If they're lost, the evidence is lost.
Okay, so the thing is that I understand what you're saying, right? I agree with you that there might be some things that have happened, but in a very extraordinary situation, there's no evidence of it, right? My point is that the likelihood is possible to be true, but the likelihood of something that big happening without a trace of evidence is extremely low. I give it to you that the chance of that is not zero.
You can't arbitrarily say something
Right?
that it is very low or it's nearly impossible, based upon simply your opinion.
That's not my opinion.
No, of course it is. No, because
That's history.
no.
That's historical.
Did you know
That's
that
all of
we've
history.
lost 99.99% of all species?
Well, yeah, but
We've lost them.
we have evidence for it.
No, we've lost them
Right.
completely.
Right?
So in the fossil, for example, in fossil remains.
So you were switching to something else?
No, I'm giving you about evidence about history.
You see, that's what I was
No,
doing when I
but
switched.
this is specific.
I know.
This is specific to you. This is specific to your historical claim. Specific to your historical claim. 99.9% of the fossils don't exist. They're lost. No. My point to you is, now if there was, let's say for argument's sake, a three-legged elephant that lived 100 million years ago,
Right.
okay? And I make the claim. I
understand your point.
Okay, I make the claim.
understand your point.
Okay, I make the claim. All you can say is that I don't have any evidence for
Right.
that three-legged elephant.
Right?
Why do you claim that there was a three-legged elephant?
Right?
Okay,
So,
hold on a second, right? So then I would say, okay, of course the Quran doesn't talk about three-legged elephants, but I would bring the Quran and I would say, this is my evidence, and these are the, hold on a second, let me just finish.
okay.
And these are the reasons why I believe
The
that
Quran
this
is true.
Quran is true.
So you see the double
No,
standard.
hold on a second. There's no double standard here, brother. The double standard is up there.
Okay.
It's not in what I'm telling you.
Okay, the double standard is, like, let's say I have a book.